Just 22% of eighth graders are proficient in civics, according to the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Now, the NAEP Civics Assessment measures students' understanding of democratic citizenship, government, and American constitutional democracy. Now, these are future voters and future taxpayers. Former UN Ambassador Andrew Young, he's advocating for more civics engagement among young people. And he draws from experiences he had following civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. Joining us to discuss her latest article at thecentersquare.com, Civil Rights Curriculum Aims to Shape Future Leaders, is the Center Square education reporter Esther Wickham. Esther, thanks for taking time with us. Andrew Young, for people who don't know who that is, go ahead and tell us about his professional background and also his connections to Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Greg, for having me. So I had the privilege to speak to former UN Ambassador Andrew Young. He is pivotal when it comes to the civil rights movement. As you said, he was a very close friend and honestly Martin Luther King Jr.'s right-hand man during many pivotal moments in the civil rights movement. Following that, he did have some time with the UN as a UN ambassador and also as the former mayor of Atlanta. And so he has some political background. And so he's definitely been an activist and has had many places in advocacy. And he definitely has an emphasis in education as he values future generations. He recognizes that it's important for young kids to know what happened in the past so they can kind of move on for current forces and also for the future to understand what is important and how to educate young people now and in the future to figure out, what is best for society and for the world to progress. And so I was able to speak with him on a myriad of levels, speaking about this specific curriculum that we're going to talk about today, but also his time with Martin Luther King Jr. during the civil rights movement. And it was just incredible to hear so many stories he had to say.
Oh, and the history, I imagine, just kind of looking back, you learn about some of that in school, but to talk to somebody who is actually involved with a lot of that has got to be invigorating. Esther, talk a little bit about the civics education that is currently in schools and how much that's progressed and what exactly Mr. Young is looking for when it comes to the outcomes of this curriculum.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just like you said, Greg, we're at, 22% proficient in civics. That means that, about 78% of students are not proficient in civics education. And that's not only civil rights or understanding what happened in the 1960s, but also just our American history, the Constitution, the founding fathers, why America started and what's the importance of 1776. This is something that is not really being highlighted or valued in the education system, and that's only in K through 12. We're also seeing this significant decline as well in college, and this is important because it shapes a generation. It shapes students to figure out what happened so that history doesn't repeat itself. They can learn from mistakes or from positive actions of leaders. And so if you ask students to kind of summarize or tell us about it, they can't necessarily do that. And so Ambassador Young, when speaking with him, he endorsed this recent curriculum. It's called the Civil Rights Global Perspective, powered by McGraw-Hill Education. He's one of many experts and historical leaders that endorse this curriculum because it doesn't just focus on our differences. It focuses on what unites a society, what unites people. And he believes, which I think what this curriculum fundamentally teaches, which is why he strongly supports it, is the teachings of Dr. King, focusing on empathy, brotherhood, perseverance, unity. These are pivotal things that I think he believes changed the civil rights movement, actually made it extremely effective. And, he, as well as Dr. Matthew Daniels, talks about, well, anyone can go out and protest, but it takes, some time and perseverance to actually make those protests and make your voice heard in an effective way to change and move a generation. And I think that's what we saw in the civil rights movement. And I think that's why Ambassador Young endorses this curriculum to kind of reshape and educate students about the teachings of Dr. King.
And you of course talked to Ambassador Young for the story, but you talked to, as you mentioned, Anderson University professor Matthew Daniels. Here's some of what he had to tell you about this curriculum.
There's been a real failure to educate young people about how to actually achieve social justice. I remember a few years ago, a group of students in my class in not at Anderson, at another university, approached me and said, Professor, we were all involved in protests during the pandemic, and a lot of us are wondering what difference it made. And I really didn't have the heart to say to them, probably not much, because you didn't even have a goal or an objective. You didn't have a strategy. In every endeavor, in every area of society, if you have no goal, no strategy, no plan, you're probably not going to accomplish much. And that's true when it comes to social justice movements. Just going out and protesting doesn't necessarily lead to any result. It might actually lead to bad results. Again, people have forgotten that the civil rights movement was very deliberate, very disciplined, very strategic in everything they did. And that's one of the reasons they were so effective. However, what we're learning is that by having really de-emphasized civic education, we're paying a terrible price. Because at the end of the day, character is actually the most important object of any educational program.
Esther, as you've reported on in the past, even just a few weeks ago, we saw kids walking out of class to protest immigration enforcement, right? I mean, how does what we saw a couple of weeks ago with those types of protests compare to what Ambassador Young is talking about? It's about what the professor's talking about here. Is it really showing kind of a lack of true understanding about what civic engagement should look like versus what it shouldn't look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think exactly what Dr. Daniels kind of highlights. It comes down to character and a genuine knowledge for what people are fighting for. When I spoke with Ambassador Young, he highlighted, it wasn't these. I mean, the same thing with founding fathers as well. It was a bunch of young people, right? 17, 18, 19. He said that him and Dr. King were fresh out of college. So we're talking about 22-year-olds, trying to fight for a new generation. And we're seeing that same thing here, young students walking out. But I think the difference here, speaking with many other education experts, especially Lance Azumi for Pacific Research Institute, he highlights that, if you ask these students what they're actually fighting for, what they're actually walking out for, I don't think they could fully articulate what's exactly going on. And
I mean, they got a day off class. I mean, that's
exactly,
at least what I would be thinking if I was a 15-year-old kid and you had a teacher say, "Hey, we're going to protest immigration and customs enforcement," and they don't really know what that is. They're just like, "Okay, well, I get a out of class free card for the day."
Right. And what you see with a lot of these protests is they're happening during school because they're specifically student walkouts. So what is happening on the weekends? What is happening, after 3, 4 p.m.? Not a lot of activity. A lot of these walkouts for students are during the school time. And so, yeah, a lot of them, they're like free school day, or if the school district is kind of fearful of ICE or immigration enforcement happening in the area, some kids get off fully for 2, 3, 4 weeks. Their classes are put online like it was back in COVID time. And so there's a difference when adults are kind of self-starting and training this initiative for young people versus what we've seen in the civil rights movement is young people starting it and starting a movement. When I spoke with Ambassador Young, he shared the story of how these young demonstrators and protests in Birmingham, Alabama, came to Dr. King and said, "Hey, we want to start a movement in Birmingham." And he told Ambassador Young, "Hey, speak with some white people down there, try and let's have a conversation before we go down there, because the main reason we protest is people know what we're protesting for." And so he shared the story of, he contacted this lady at an Episcopalian church, and he got the churchmen and the bishops together. So these white and black folks had a meeting. He explained how he was there. He saw it go down. It was very respectful. Dr. King explained why they were going down to Birmingham to protest. And that's kind of the spark what we saw happening in Birmingham, Alabama, but it spawned out of these young people self-starting, initiating what they saw as a huge problem. And I think that's kind of a big push that Ambassador Young sees in this curriculum. It teaches students the teachings of Dr. King, as well as, it's not just about civics education, but your character and your heart behind what you actually believe, not just other people telling you what to believe, but what you actually think and see the world.
Is there any indication that there might be efforts to ensure that bias doesn't work into these conversations, right? I mean, thinking back to the education I had about the civil rights movements, of course, there was a lot of nonviolent protests and things that were done with purpose, people taking to the streets nonviolently, but it was a violent era, right? I mean, there was a lot of clashes with law enforcement and protesters, just thinking about the 1968 Democrat Convention in Chicago, for example, right? A lot of violence there. But is there an effort from what you've seen so far to ensure that it's balanced whenever these themes and these ideas are being presented to such young and impressionable minds?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the curriculum is something Dr. Daniels, highlighted is it's for K through 12, but it's also for college, and other adults that are willing to kind of engage in this, because it's an online, digital platform. So though it's still, for 21-year-olds and younger, this is something that they really believe is important, because like you said, even though this is something Dr. King kind of fought for, there was still violence, there was still a lot of things going on in that time, but I think at the end of the day, each unit, as they kind of go through, each unit is highlighted one kind of teaching of Dr. King. So one unit is, we're focusing on perseverance. The next unit, we're focusing on brotherhood, empathy, and so on and so forth. And I think that there is definitely a big push for diversity and making sure that you have this environment to speak your mind and talk about what's been going on in the world today. So there's a highlight for civil discourse we see. And along with this curriculum, Dr. Daniels kind of highlighted that they do have an Ambassador Young program for all students to engage in. It's kind of a scholarship, a week-long program for people, teachers and students to kind of come together and learn more about Dr. King's teachings, and also just trying to figure out, how do we go from here? What have we seen in the past? And how do we move forward to not only focus on what we're fighting for and what we believe in, but also to move about in a way that all of us can feel heard and have civil discourse and just be respectful, because Ambassador Young, highlights that he saw that happen with Dr. King before they went down to Birmingham to protest, and it can still happen today. It's possible. You just got to fight for that civility.
And that fostering of civil dialogue, right? Instead of some of the things we're seeing on the streets as of late between, protesters for one cause and protesters that are counter to that cause, and police having to use limited taxpayer resources to get in the middle and make sure everybody's safe and secure. But it sounds like this is a more of a kind of a review of how to have these political conversations versus the nuts and bolts of civic engagement, right? The hey, there's an election every 2 years to elect members of the House, and this is Schoolhouse Rock's version of how a bill becomes a law type thing. Is that something that schools are going to have the ability to do when they've got limited taxpayer resources?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of the aim for this curriculum, especially McGraw-Hill, and something Dr. Daniels highlighted too is they don't have to just take the curriculum at face value. They're able to take proponents of it and incorporate it in other areas that they're teaching, and it's not just Dr. King as well. They're reading, the story of Rosa Parks, the story of Emmett Till, those kinds of books, just really pivotal Black historical figures in that time and what they did to change a generation. Because now what we're seeing is kind of a loss of that knowledge of civics, of history, especially during that time. And so I think this curriculum aims just to kind of get back to that, so that future generations don't necessarily forget what happened in the 1960s.
Well, Esther Wickham, education reporter for the Center Square, greatly appreciate you taking the time, and what an honor it is to talk to Ambassador Young. It's right here with the Center Square Daily.